Hi, welcome, Esi. Welcome to Revolutionary Rompereglas Podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much. I feel great. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, of course. So I'm going to properly introduce you, and then we're going to get into your story. And so I want to start by sharing that Esi, as you go by Esi Wildcat, is a somatic facilitator and ordained priestess of Isis, a Shakta initiate, and a yogini in the lineage of Sri Vidya, certified holistic health practitioner and interdisciplinary healing artist with over 20 years of expertise. She envisions a world where all humans harness the power to intuit and maintain wellness and aliveness in all areas of their lives. Esi is passionate about conversations that create change as a space holder for the primal emotions that often have no place in our contemporary world: grief, rage, despair, and anger. As a bridge builder to the new earth, she is making waves in the cultural somatic realm and is injecting the social justice sphere with much needed humanness and nuance. And we'll get into that. Part of her mission is to form a human brigade of cross-cultural workers who will be using ritual, magic, and their various gifts to subvert systems. Esi seeks to highlight the extraordinary in the ordinary and how the power of presence in our lives can transform not only how we relate to ourselves, but the world around us. This is beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Esi, for being here.
Thank you so much.
So that was a long intro that really sort of like rounded out a lot of what you do. So I want you to go ahead and share, a little bit of your path in developing the Human Brigade. And what is the Human Brigade, and what brought you to it?
Okay. Great question. I entered the realm of somatics about 6 years ago. I met, I heard of a woman named Anne Bratney while I was looking at astrology books in a metaphysical bookstore. And I saw a little tag that said something about vibrancy and having yourself. And I thought, oh, I'm going to check this out. So I went to a couple open nights they had, and then I ended up taking a workshop with Anne called Lower Self, Higher Self, and Mask, which is where I first got to really experience the beauty of somatic work, to where actually it scared me. We were in lower self, and I could just feel something was coming through, and it was gruesome, and it felt to me a little demonic. And I remember I got so scared. We were banging on a mattress, our hands and feet. And I remember I stopped, and Anne was like, "Don't stop, like something's gonna crack." And I hadn't really heard of the work. I didn't know what was happening. So I had that moment, and then Anne invited me to Radical Aliveness Institute, and I didn't talk to any of them for 3 years because I was like, what just happened? I couldn't, it scared me, honestly, because I felt I'm someone who can be very rigid and in control. I felt so out of control. And I've been studying energy work for a while. So even in the frames of my energy work, I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know what just happened. So 3 years passed, and the school was still stuck in my head. So I ended up enrolling to become a somatic facilitator. And people always like, I did this thing and my life changed, but really my life did change.
That's how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm Caribbean, and so I come from a pretty collectivist background. My parents always just instilled in us to think about more than ourselves. In collectivist culture, there can almost be a tendency to put others before you.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of my healing journey, was that I had to kind of individuate. I was too enmeshed with my family and enmeshed. Honestly, the collectivism extended to friends. So there's this way I'm like overly loyal and enmeshed with people. And I just felt like I need my own Um, and so it was not easy. It was not easy having to, at first, some of the work contradicted things I knew as a collectivist, or not contradict, it was a different way of looking at things. And I tell this story sometimes when I talk about the Human Brigade. I'm a Caribbean American person. And so the first year at the school, I fled the room every module because I couldn't, quote unquote, take all the white people. And so my first year of school was just me being triggered and running out the room for the whole year. What changed was that a beautiful mentor came into the school, a Caribbean woman. She's not Caribbean American. She actually be considered, I think, more Caribbean European. She goes by the name of Nikki Angel, and she is from a little island called Curacao, but she grew up and spent, I believe, a lot of her time in Holland and the Netherlands. So she kind of like gave me an energetic kind of shake and was like, if this is how you want to live your life, continue. And if you want more, it's time for you to take your power back. I would have thought that she would have demanded in a way that, like, the white people give me power. I don't know. None of it happened the way I thought it would have happened. It did not happen at all. One real poignant moment was I was in total, like, activated. I'm letting these white people know just what I think about them. And she was, my mentor came in between us and she asked me what I wanted here. She's like, what are you wanting here? Yeah, and that just slowed me so down that I don't even think I had an intention. I think it was just like, oh, this is allowed. They're white men. I'm allowed to just vomit on them. Oh, look how fun they squirm and tremble at all my Black rage. So there was a lot of kind of a narcissistic glee in being righteous. And I think that's what people are discovering, that righteousness is kind of a disguised narcissism. And I was in it. And you're allowed to have all your emotions in the school. But when she said, now, what's your intention behind all of this? I paused and I remember the first thing that just came out, I couldn't even think about it. I said, oh, I want connection here, which was also not something I thought I would have said. I thought I would have said, like, I want to educate them, or I'm trying to make them understand. And it was like, actually, I'm the one wanting connection. I'm the one wanting something here, and to take ownership of my feelings and energy, even in something as messy and chaotic as like looking at systems or inequalities. It was just a game changer for me. It really was.
Yeah. And this is like, I love your perspective on just about like relationships, like the whole dialogue around Blackness and whiteness. You have like a little bit of a different edge there that I appreciate, just as like, it just feels like a breath of like something a little bit like out of the standard that we're in now.
Right. That is kind of what prompted the Human Brigade was when George Floyd happened and there were all the uprisings. I had so many people come to me that I probably wouldn't even have to work right now had I taken all that energy. And something in me knew, like, this isn't it. Like, this isn't it. Like, I could totally be an opportunist right now and take all this money, and I could feel like I actually wouldn't be doing anyone a service doing this right now. Like I said, I'm Caribbean, so my mom, she grew up in Jim Crow as a Black woman, but my mom is like probably as light as you or lighter. She has Scottish in her. She had, she's a total island mutt. People from the islands have a lot of stuff in them. And I feel like she has some type of First Nations blood in her. She discovered actually her people came from Peru. So my whole life growing up, when my mom would pick me up from school, almost without fail, if my mom picked me up, people in LA here would be like, why is that Mexican lady picking you up? Because here she looks more what people would categorize as a Mexican. And so it was actually from very young, I started realizing like, oh, we categorize things not because they're true. It's just a way to help us feel safer in the world. You know, I think another thing that greatly influenced me was I started playing piano when I was 3. They thought I was going to be something of a prodigy. So I actually spent a lot of my formal years around a lot of Asian people, and remember being kind of like in these highly exclusive elite music programs where all the Asian children had perfect pitch and like all these things that I had to work at very, very, very hard, to where I was like, oh, I guess just all Asian people are born with perfect pitch. And it wasn't till I actually became friends with someone that they were like, no, we're working constantly to give this effortless look of this, you know, perfect pitch, you know. And so I think just as a youngster and being curious, just, I mean, even with religion, there were just little ways my mind was like, something, this isn't all the story, you know, even with religion, being Christian. And I remember being a young girl asking about Buddhists and Hindus, what happens to them? And people kind of being like, oh, well, they go to hell, or we don't know. It's like, I kind of realized very young, like, oh, these people don't know anything. They're kind of making it up as they go along, which actually it used to make me sad, but as I get older, I'm like, wow, how much freedom there is in that actually all the rules, you know, I can be such a good girl, all the rules that I thought were, there's actually no rules.
All made up.
And so when I thought about that, I was thinking about just what shaped me and shaped my world. And after Trump got elected, I must say, being in a Black body started feeling small to me, but only when I talked to my friends because they were so focused on a certain type of the experience. And this could get me in trouble, but I know even when I'm manipulating my mother, like sometimes it's easier to focus on certain experiences because you're juicing something out of it. You know what I mean? And so I remember pretty quickly after Trump got elected that I pretty much decided I was never going to say his name. So if you look at my Facebook in all 4 years, I've never mentioned him. I really wanted to feel what I think my parents wanted to give me, but the way they tried to give it to me, meaning the way they tried to keep my Black mind free, a lot of the messaging in that wasn't, it would not have supported me living vibrantly. A lot of the, you know, as a collectivist, I have struggled with, you know, we grew up pretty middle class, so I've never been in hunger. I can't say that I know poverty. And I could tell that even in my experience, there's people who meet me as a Black woman and they think that's the Black experience. You must be hungry and poor. And then if you're like, well, I'm not hungry and poor, it's kind of curious the reactions you get. Sometimes I even shamed myself, I feel like, for not being so hungry and poor, as like, I thought I needed to have what was called the Black experience. And then I just think more I thought about it, the more I just decided like, I'm gonna speak up and talk more about what I'm seeing, because if I go by if I'm seeing off of internet, of Facebook, IG, and the media as the Black experience, then I don't think I get to feel very good.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I had a lot of loss in kind of doing this little pivot, but overall, I would say I feel better.
What was the loss?
Oh boy, I had people tell me that basically I wasn't sticking to the groupthink. As much as we all say that we don't like groupthink, much as we all say we want to think for ourselves, there's a lot of ways that we bargain our power and our realness to fit in. So, you know, I lived in Brooklyn 13 years. A lot of my friends from Brooklyn just stopped talking to me. They thought I was trying to be some type of I heard this a lot, that I'm being a contrarian, that I can't bring up these issues if I'm not at the same time gonna offer solutions. And I could feel it. It was a way of like, in a way, I had kind of let the cat out the bag, because, you know, I grew up in the 80s. So in the 80s and 90s, you always heard like, there's certain things you don't say in mixed company.
Yeah.
No, there's this whole idea of mixed company. And when I did my school project for school, I did it on reclaiming my joy for a project for Black women. And one of the participants was a young millennial African-American woman. And she said, she was like, I don't think millennials care about all this race stuff like this. Mm-hmm. I think it's different for us because the chimes are changing. And I remember actually a lot of my project turning into me listening to her and getting more of like her outlook and her frame and what's happening for her, because it was like, I was 42, so she was about 32. She was about 10 years younger than me. And I almost was like shocked to hear how much had changed in 10 years, according to her. And that stuff had changed, but there was stuff that I had learned that was still in me. And that's where the somatic work came in, where it was like, before, the stuff that was in me, I would have just thought, oh, this is truth, or this is a fact. And then it was like, oh, no, actually, these are stories and different things that are just living in me. So actually, it was very interesting to have her in the group. Now, this was before George Floyd, too, though. So I think what I love about life is we wish it was static. Like, we all want to arrive somewhere. We all want to plant our feet there and be like, we've arrived. And even with that, it was like, oh, I'd be so curious to check in with her after the uprisings in George Floyd, you know? And then even thinking about how, you know, the millennials are who gave us the term social justice. Like, when I was in college, I went to Berkeley, so you could be an activist, but most people weren't really trying to be activists. When I talked to a lot of my millennial friends, like, activism is actually part of their framework. That was not part of my framework as someone in my 40s. There were the activists over there. And then I could come in and out. Oh, I'm going to go to a march today. But pretty much the activists had their own thing. So part of what I realized too was, for millennials, activism's kind of already built into their framework in a certain way. It wasn't built for us. And so, and I think that's beautiful. And then what I started watching was, you know, the societal was just where everyone can dump their shit. So even in my own learning, I had to realize when I was using the system as a way to hide, you know, like, say if I'm in a group and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's all this systemic stuff happening in here. Is it really happening in here? Or is this an easy thing that I now can use to be like, actually, I don't want to show up, so I'm going to just say it's the system and I don't even have to show up, and I can sit back here and be all judgy about the system. Like, there was a point in my work with radical aliveness that I was like, oh, this is tricky, because this is allowed. It's allowed for me to want to vomit. Like, that's allowed now. Like, it's allowed for certain groups of people to vomit all over other groups of people. The people being vomited on, they cannot defend themselves or say anything. It's kind of like, well, this is what you're owed. These are our reparations, or like whatever we justify to vomit on another person. And I just saw it for years, time and time again. That room, it took nothing for that room to split into people of color and whites every time. Mm-hmm. It took no amount of thought. Like, I don't even think, like I said, I even watched myself. Like, it was a lot of times people think like, oh, I'm woke. I don't know how much consciousness, because I saw it. It didn't require a lot of consciousness to divide a room. You
Right.
know, actually, that's what we were all taught, that
Yes.
it's so automatic. What? I feel a threat and you look different. Division. And so I kind of became known as the chick in the school who was like, I would literally be like this in the middle.
Wow. Just kind of moving back and forth.
And touching both sides, saying, I see you, I touch you, I hear you. Because, you know, usually what would happen is the people of color side would start screaming at the white people how they don't even care about them. They don't want to hear their stories, no thing. And I would have to say like, I care. And I actually do want to hear your story. And I would have to turn to the other side and say, and I hear that you're vexed and you're pissed and you think their stories matter more than yours. I'm telling you, they don't. And it was like this constant, you know, and I actually took great joy from it, because in a way it was like, this is more real than all that screaming and missing each other. For me, for some people, you know, I remember when I first got woke at 19 in Berkeley, I was furious. Yeah, when you first get woke, you're furious. And then after a year or so, it doesn't sustain. So usually when people are like, oh, these social justice people, they're so angry. To me, I would always know like, okay, these are people young and new to the frames. And so, yeah, they need the time to like get shit out of their system, because it doesn't stay here.
Right.
You
Right.
know, that's like level sub-zero.
Yeah.
You know, and so part of what I was interested in, well, what is our real work? You know, I'm kind of a rainbow person. I have, my mom's a rainbow bridge of many things. I've been in African divinations. I remember the woman giving me my African divination one. She was like, good grief, you are a rainbow. So it's like, I don't say that lightly. Like,
Yes.
it's in my DNA. I feel like actually part of my calling here, I always felt from young, like, oh, you're going to help offer some solutions to this race thing, because it plagued me from young. I saw it from young, just how it didn't make sense. It was like, this doesn't make sense. You know, even hearing my own mom say how like, my own mom didn't want my mom's parents to be together because my dad was too dark and that we wouldn't have good hair. Like, that's all I heard growing up was how unfortunate that like the dad's so African because we have this amazing Indian hair. Don't I see that all the cousins have amazing Indian hair? Poor Esi, you have nappy hair, you know? That's not from white people. And yeah, people are like, well, that's internalized. No. You know what? I get it. And I think for me, I'm really about responsibility right now and subverting. It's like, we can blame whatever till we're blue in the face. You can blame forever. Believe me, I love blame.
It's so satisfying.
It is. The energy lasts forever, but then.
Right. So what for you is responsibility?
People always, this is the thing that always gets me in trouble. Honestly, responsibility is being able to like, it's like your responsibility is the duty of using all your senses. So when I was first studying energy work, one of my first teachers was a woman from India, and she told me everyone's psychic because the psychicness comes from your senses. And she was like, being psychic is just actually using your senses. So to me, being responsible is actually part of maturing. So, which there's a way that when we evade responsibility, we don't have to do anything because the thing that we're giving the responsibility to, it is up to that thing. So it's almost like, well, I just gave you all my responsibility. So if you decide that you're not going to do anything with it, or you're going to dismiss it, or we're going to, you might even be wise and know like, this actually isn't mine. So I'm going to go put this somewhere else where you're ready to take it. So I think responsibility more than anything is the willingness to want to be present with what is. A lot of us want to be present with fantasy.
Yeah.
And responsibility is being present with what's actually happening.
And what's happening dynamically, right? And what's happening on multiple levels, right? What's happening mentally, what's happening emotionally, what's happening energetically, nervous system wise. Yeah.
All of it. And then the part that makes responsibility hard is, I begin my day, I do a sadhana, and then I'm in a resiliency training. So I have to write in detail to them about the tools I'm using. And part of the detail I have to write is I have to write to them each level of where I am. I have to say how I am mentally, emotionally, physically, and like oracally. Say what tool I used, and then note to them afterwards the shift. So see how they're trying to garner responsibility in me, because so say if my thing was not responsibility, I could sign up for all these amazing classes, never do them. I'm not going to come, I'm not going to do the work. And then at the end, when it's time to embody and it's time for the test, then it's like, well, why didn't you like save me from myself? And it's it's like responsibility is for people who are finally ready to decide, I'm not waiting for anyone to save me. And that includes the system. I'm not waiting for anyone whether it's Prince Charming's not coming, Joe Biden's not going to change what's going on. You know what I mean? So responsibility really is for like people who are ready to engage with life. A lot of us are tourists through life. You hear about the average person, they're a tourist in their own life till they're on their deathbed. And then it's like, oh my God, I want presence. And it's like responsibility is, presence in what's actually happening and dealing with it.
Like being, I don't know, it sounds so trite, but like being in reality and also being like sovereign in reality. But
you know what? You would think it sounds trite. It's not that trite, we're saying, right? Because how many, like I said, I was, like everyone else, I love these symbolic figures. Yay, Kamala, yay, Obama. But you know what? On the average day-to-day, did that really change my life? Really? Or was it the day-to-day, what I'm doing here, changing my life? And so, I think, responsibilities, it's kind of it's interesting because if you read experts like, I don't even know what kind of experts these are. They're usually old white guys who write really big books, but there's been a couple really big books about how basically culturally we are stunted in adolescence. So it would make sense that we're not reaching the levels of responsibility we could, because a lot of us are still playing kind of lower level games and getting rewards from them. Yeah. Honestly, like there are rewards to be gained from like not showing up for your life and not feeling well. Actually, the harder thing is feeling well.
Being in pleasure, joy, receptivity.
That's harder. Or even for me, being in like finally feeling like, oh, I don't need to be struggling financially to prove I love my people. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like yeah, and the speaking of like feeling well, I know that you've had a lot of training in the receptive arts. Feminine arts. Yes. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that and sort of what that that level of transformation, and then let's bring it into Human Brigade. Wow. My. I think that life wants to show us what it wants from us. And so there's a way I live that it's not necessarily conscious, but that I'm kind of doing certain things right in a weird way, even though I might not feel like it. So pre-COVID, I could not keep up the pace with life. Actually, I had a hard time. I was always comparing myself to people who seemed to, hustle. I remember feeling like, well, I definitely don't want to hustle because hustlers always hustle. And I'm kind of a lady of leisure, you know, we don't want to be. So I remember pre-COVID kind of, not even kind of, thinking I wasn't going to offer any spiritual or healing work because it seemed like too much of an industry to me and I couldn't grapple with it, honestly. So COVID kind of like introduced everybody to where my baseline is. So COVID is my baseline. I'm always COVIDing. But I think it's because when I was younger, I was a pretty grueling, dedicated performer that had to be on all the time. So it's not like I just naturally, I think it's a reaction from my childhood a little bit. So I remember my first spiritual teacher when I moved to LA was a Jamaican man named Judah. And actually, he's the one who told me. He said, oh, you've come back home from Brooklyn. And he's like, you are going on this journey of the divine feminine. And I remember Isha, I was like, I mean, you could have shat in my mouth. Like, I was just like, I was like, what? Like, this sounds horrible. Like, it doesn't sound like anything I want to do. Like, I remember even thinking like, what in the world is a divine feminine? Like, I had all kinds of reactions, and we never talked about it since. He actually told me, he's like, you're going to go on this journey and you're going to help other ladies go on this journey. And I remember I was like, I don't even like the feminine. Like, what are you?
Get it the fuck away from me.
Yeah, no, seriously. I was kind of like, what are you talking about? I'm a tomboy. I'm queer. I don't do the feminine. Okay. And what I realized as time passed, the feminine is just the force that she's chaos. So she's chaos. She's dissolution. And I realized after a while, like, oh my gosh, the feminine's the force that strips away anything that's not real. Mm-hmm. And that's why she's been so vilified, because if you want to keep people in illusion, a force stripping things away that aren't real, well, that's no good. So let's vilify everything below here. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, yeah, I was raised collectivist, but I still live in a Western culture. So like most of Western culture, I lived here from my neck and above. And I think without going into too many details, there was plant medicine involved, you know, a long journey, like you said. But I think really what I would want to share is I firmly believe what guided me, everyone has that. Yes. Everyone can read, you know, I wake up most mornings and I'm like, I'll stand in my driveway and I'm like, how's it feeling out here today? And I'll just look and feel and see how it feels to me. You know, how do I feel about today? Like I have friends who are, right now it's Mercury retrograde. So, and this is the power of our minds. I have friends who are like, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde. Oh my God. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even, like, I wouldn't know that really. Because when I go outside and feel how it feels for me, I don't feel, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde, you know? And it wasn't till a couple friends were, oh my God, in Mercury retrograde. Then I had some Mercury retrograde moments. But before that, I wasn't even that aware it was Mercury retrograde. It was just like, wow, another beautiful day. So I think we haven't been taught how powerful we are. I think we haven't been taught how magical we are. You know, I had a friend and she was like, oh, your life's so charmed. And there are probably ways it is, but the ways my life is charmed are ways I think everyone's life can be charmed if they would like. And like I said, it's not, what makes this path not easy is that everything's on me. So even lately, you know, I have a lover friend and I notice when I am not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I love harping on him. If I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, he can't do anything right because I got my eye on you and I'm watching you. You better be doing what I think you should be doing. Because if you ain't doing what I think you should be doing, we're going to have a problem. you know, and then I could just feel myself curl and get all tight. And then one day, you know, that spirit, we'll call it feminine, she was like, this is when you're not being so feminine. And I kept thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna have to break up with him. I don't know. You know, it's so funny. It's been like just 2 months of me practicing, like really just owning all my energy and really owning, like, I'm annoyed. I want to blame you. Is it really you? Like, if I own all this energy, can you really annoy me? Really? And then when I sit in that energy, he actually can't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there may be times where I have to say, hey, this is a wall of mine, or this is a boundary of mine, not okay. But in general, that thing I was doing between us where it was like, I just couldn't be comfortable and I needed him to like be a thing, like to where even he's like, what's going on lately? And I was like, I'm learning how to mind my own business. You know what I mean?
Yes, I want to laugh so hard because it's so true, because we get all in our stories about the other person and they're not doing it right.
Yeah. I'm a Gemini with a Virgo rising. So if, for me to get into story, it's like either a shame spiral down to the land of quicksand. We know each other very well, me and the quicksand lands. I could probably like map them for people, like beware the big hole down there, you know? But like, yeah, when you decide to, you know, mature, and I won't lie, I'm still in a maturation process, that it hurts. It hurts to be able to, it hurts not to be able to say like, here, take care of this for me, you know, take care of it.
The wish of every inner child to just like outsource the stuff.
Right. And to bring this to Human Brigade, I learned how there's a lot of stuff we want to outsource to figureheads that is actually going to require us all coming online together. So, you know, COVID's here. We're in a new type of paradigm. We don't know, that still remains to be seen. If, you know, one of my favorite things before COVID was Korean spas. That's probably never coming back. And so it still remains to be seen a lot of our quote unquote normal life that is or isn't coming back. And the clearest example I could give is when Trump got elected, there's this cat at our school. I won't give his name. He's from Chicago. He's kind of very alpha, not kind of, he's very alpha. And he'd like to let us all know how alpha he was. But he basically used to run around the room screaming how good it felt to be white again. And I would just watch. I'm an observer. I used to be a very quiet child, so I can observe. So I remember I would watch him run around, and then I would like look to be like, what's happening after he does this? And people, I mean, oh, Fallout City. Like you would think like, yeah, it was just Fallout City. And then the words of my mentor rang in my head, Nikki Angel, when she was like, you know, we kind of have these ways that we abdicate power to people who really have no power over our lives. They really don't. So I'm watching everyone lose their energy. And I was like, I'm going to ask this guy, what's he doing? I was like, I'm going to ask him, what's he doing? Because he's doing something. It was clear. Something's being done. And we were actually close. We were close because I was one of the only women in the program who could handle his rage, and he had a lot of it. So I remember he did the thing, and he sat next to me laughing. He turns to me, he's like, it just feels good to be white again. So, hey, I could have been like, what? Oh my God, no, you didn't. And I want you to know that you racist, and my neck, I'm rolling it so much, it's rolling off my head. And then I was like, okay, that's a strategy. But, you know, I'm in this program paying good money. So I said, what would the program do? Oh, get curious. Which I genuinely was, because I was kind of laughing. I'm kind of a villain. So I get the villain energy of like, yeah, we're going to make you collapse right now. That's going to be great. So, you know, I was kind of with him on his villain energy, like, yeah, this is kind of funny that they're so easily foiled by you. So I said, I was like, what does that mean exactly? With all sincerity. There was no charge. Like, I remember the moment. I remember where we were. I remember what time of day it was, because we both had this twinkle in our eyes because we were both alive.
Yes.
It was an alive conversation. It wasn't a dead conversation with all the right terms. So to me, social justice, I'm not interested in a lot of the conversation. They feel dead. They feel like people are just quacking stuff they learned from other teachers, and there's no actual relating to the people in front of you, you know? Even me, I'm a pretty brown girl, but when I go into my ancestry, there's a lot there. I remember the first time I even discovered that my mom's people came from Peru. Someone told me that I was just saying that to like be special, you know?
Okay.
Like, oh, you just want to be special. It's like, no, actually, no, I want to know about myself. And this is a piece which totally makes sense why people think my mom's Mexican, because the first ancestor she could trace in like 18 something is from Peru. That adds to my complexity. That gives me more, you know how much information that gave me about myself, Isha? I realized, oh, that's why I solve things with dreaming. That's something Peruvian people do. That's something my mom and I do. Like I even told her once, I said, oh, whenever I have a huge problem, I notice I sleep a lot. And she's like, yeah, that's how we solve our problems. We don't solve them in real time. We solve them that is from that culture. You know what I mean? So it helped add more dimension to me. If I wanted to be like, no, I'm just Black and like one drop, it's just, I could feel in me, like I keep telling people, and some people don't like it, that my spiritual journey was kind of like from being Black to being human, because there's a way that if I cling to that Blackness, there's no place for you, Isha. There's no place to, you know, we share space together. A lot of those women aren't Black. There would be no space for them. Like if I really clung to it.
Yeah.
And that's what I see. It's like people cling to it and then they weaponize it against each other. That's why I realize most of my friends are mixed race, because they've probably had it being weaponized against them the whole time, you know? And so back to the Chicagoan who loved being white, when I said with like a live energy and like really being curious as a person, like, what do you mean? He had to admit, he's like, I don't even know what I mean. He's like, I don't know what I mean. He's like, I'm just saying it because it's like, look what happens when I say it. Like, look how much fun it is to like, just say it. And like, I think there's a lot of forces in the world that work that way. Like I said, where we think like, almost with the mind of a child, like, oh, the TV said, man, or like, man, the man said. And it's like, no, it's our attention, it's our energy that we give it. Like, there's not very few facts on Earth. One of the only real facts on Earth is gravity. And then you even talk to some people, even then, they're like, man, like facts, there are actually very few facts in this realm.
Yeah. Laws, right? There's very specific laws.
Yeah. But facts?
Yeah.
I mean, think about, you know, I'm 43 now, so I've gotten to see like a bit of an arc to life. And like I said, what I learned in the 80s and 90s is totally different than what, you know, that's why people are like, the children are the future. Thank God they don't have the frames I had.
Right. Yeah. We've got a lot to break down and they have, yeah.
Yeah, because it was incomplete.
Yes.
It was incomplete.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me, Human Brigade is just it's like a chance for me to say, hey, I'm inviting 10 humans in here who, I actually had a call with the woman the other day because I was like, systemic is not just about race. It can be about parents. Parents are a system.
Yeah.
Institutions are systems. Like the systemic is not just like these big themes, you know? So like she was sharing that she had a lot of stuff with men. And I was like, yeah, that's a totally systemic issue for some people. That is systemic. So it's a chance for us to all come in and like feel the richness of our lives in a way. And I realized being in school that there were certain things I couldn't learn without the other bodies there. So without those white men there were certain things I would not have learned about my own Blackness had they not been there. And so that's the beauty of it too, is that we're in this time when like groups are interesting. Like even the idea of a group, I'm someone who grew up not trusting groups. They make me actually highly uncomfortable. you know? And so I had a lot of healing just even going through school and like being in so many damn groups, because I was like, I'm never in this many groups. Oh my God, I can't take it. I want to, you know, and there were times where I had to have my process and be like, I'm grouped out and have to sit in the corner and like learn how to take care of myself. So it's just, I keep telling people, we will see what's alive in each of us while we're there.
Yes.
Because I keep saying it's not an anti-racist training. This is not a diversity training. This is really a chance for us all to learn to see in new ways together.
Yes.
So I'm not an expert. I don't come in the space. It's like, I'm the expert of the Human Brigade. It's like, my shit's gonna come up too. I keep telling people I have 2 supervisors for myself the whole process, because I already know my shit's gonna come up. And I always knew from young that I would be part of the changing conversation. And to me, this is part of how the conversation can change. And it's just a little contribution. I was thinking today about the somatic wellness industry and what an industry it is becoming, because it's getting more popular. And I think there used to be a part of me that wished I was more part of the industry, but I'm seeing people who are part of the industry having kind of an interesting time. And I'm like, I'm kind of happy for my own little corner, my little work, like that I didn't turn my work into like a worthiness issue for myself. Because even with this group, it's like winter, when it was like showing me that it wanted to be done, part of me was like, I don't want to do it. It's winter. I want to just lay around. And the group was like, no, it's time.
Yeah.
So a lot of this isn't even me. It's honestly like I remember when the idea for the Human Brigade came, everyone came to me for George Floyd. People were telling me I needed to make a statement because my father was murdered by the police when I was 22. So people have always kind of seen me as this expert on that. And it's funny that just came up. I didn't get along with my dad. So we were estranged 6 years when it happened. And so just even the level of complexity and like, my father was murdered by the police, and it was a man I actually didn't like, who didn't treat me well. And that has its own complexity. And so, I mean, obviously it's why I've been driven to like do all the things I've done. And at the same layer, he didn't treat me well. And I was a daddy's girl, like, you know, like my shit's all, all unravels. So, and just, like I said, I'm middle-aged now, almost about, middle-aged, I guess they would call me now. And now that I'm starting to see an arc to my life, it's kind of like, oh, wow, I am so complex that how dare I look at any person, I don't care who they are, and erase that for them. Because I felt how it felt when people erase it for me. I don't like it. And so I don't do it to others. It doesn't matter if I'm justified by a cultural trope that I can do it to others. I don't do it to others because, you know, there's a lot even now happening to create these moments that we can either be a part of or like I said, be a tourist and kind of like, you know. And I was a tourist in my life for a long time. I suffer with a heavy marijuana addiction that I'm slowly dismantling. I've been smoking marijuana longer than I haven't been at this point. And you know, that's a great dissociative, soothing numbing agent that I used for years to soothe that. Now, the level I'm moving into, it's like, oh, this cannot go with me. And I have not developed other ways to soothe myself as yet. So part of the Human Brigade too is just to normalize what a process life is.
Absolutely.
And just normalize
life.
Yeah, normalize life, honestly.
Love it. Love it. Yes. And transparent leadership. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, you know, that day when the white guys were in front of me and I realized that I wanted connection, and even thinking about it's about to make me cry, the whole timbre of the room changed from me realizing that, which showed me I have way more power than I was giving myself credit for, right? If I would want it to be like, Black women had no power, we bottom of the king. In someone's world, that's true, I guess. I don't need to make that true in my world. And I mean, it was so palpable how much just my softening made it so they could actually hear me, which was funny. It's almost counterintuitive. Like after I softened, then they were more willing to be like, okay, I want to.
So Human Brigade is 6 weeks.
It's 8 weeks. It's 2 months.
2 months, 8 weeks, 2 months. And for those of you listening, it begins on the 14th. So too late to sign up for this one, but Esi will be taking, people on the wait list for the next time it runs.
Yes, I keep it very small. I don't allow more than 10 people. For this first one, I have about 5 or 6, and it's fun. They're all nervous and writing me every week because they're nervous. I could tell they're nervous. They're like, oh shit, what? I think I make them even more nervous when they're like, what's the agenda? And I'm like, agenda?
It's like whatever energy's in the room, high risk, high sensation.
That's what I tell them. And that will probably spend the most of the time just normalizing discomfort. That's probably all that's going to happen in the 8 weeks. Nothing. Yeah, I think people come and they, I like people like me. But I do tell people like, you're going to come in this group and it might be boring because since most of us live from the neck up, it's going to be kind of a slow unwind into the subtle bodies. And then you're going to get there and realize how highly uncomfortable you feel. So it's not going to be like, oh, now that I've met my subtle energetic bodies, everything's better. You're going to like feel all the sludge, all the numbing, you just got to be okay with like not feeling so okay at first.
Esi, thank you so much for being here on this podcast and for sharing your wisdom and your just this expansive view that is available, right? These truths that are beyond sort of what we see every day, what's been normalized as the discourse.
Yeah.
Really appreciate that. Thank
you so much. I loved it. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.